to our webinar. My name is Monika Herzog and I work in the global organization at Orange Cyberdefense. In today's sessions, we are unpacking Mythos, the phenomenon, and its impact on your cybersecurity. To shed some light in the direction we are going, I have invited my expert panel. Let me introduce you Matthew Kaplan, our moderator of this panel. He is Director of Professional Services at Orange Cyberdefense. And I'm very pleased to announce that we have here as a panelist Vivien Mura, our Chief Technology Officer. From the research team, we have Wicus Ross, Senior Security Researcher. And from South Africa, we have the Managing Director and Ethical Hacking Director from South Africa. And from the US, we have Tim Wenneker, our Security Solution Expert. Please note, we don't have a lot of slides. This is a panel format. This session will be recorded and we will share the link to the recording by email tomorrow. So at the end of our presentation, our panel session, we will have another question and answer session. So if you have any burning questions, please type them into your question box and our expert will try to respond to them as many as possible. And now I invite Matthew to take over and moderate this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Monika. Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew Kaplan. Over the next hour, helped by my fantastic panel of experts, we will explore the emerging landscape of AI-driven vulnerabilities, exploits, and autonomous attack chains. Together, we'll discuss what Mythos means, whether next-generation AI models are becoming game changers. We'll unpack the trends, the challenges, and explore best practices to help you find some solutions. I can see that we've got attendees today from over 70 countries, from every continent around the globe. So it's clear that Mythos and this whole topic is a global concern and that AI is actually uniting the whole world. Feel free to ask questions in the question tab, as Monika mentioned, in your right-hand corner, and we will address those towards the end of the session. But before I begin, I'd like to start with a quick poll, the goal being to help us better understand what motivates your defensive approach as a result of AI evolution. So you should see on screen a question, which is, what are your main concerns about the evolution of AI? Whether that be data privacy and security, bias and discrimination, job displacement and economic impact, misinformation, accountability, and safety and malicious use. We'll just allow a bit of time for everyone to respond, and I'll continue with a little bit of the background of why we're here. So generative AI is transforming how organizations operate, but it's creating new opportunities for cyber criminals. Mythos itself is not a malware, it's not a hacking group, it's a capability that accelerates vulnerability discovery, exploit development, and autonomous attack orchestration at machine speed. But on the positive side, it can also help organizations defend against threats. Our goal today is to help you understand what Mythos is, what the risks it introduces, and how to build a next generation AI-ready security program. So let's take a look at some of those poll responses. It seems like data privacy and security are right up there in concerns. So we'll try to address those in our dialogue, and always can come back to various people if you want later on and talk to you about that. So I'd like to get the ball rolling with Vivien and understand a bit of the background. So Vivien, what is Mythos? Why is the name gaining so much attention right now?
Thank you, Monsieur. Hello, everyone. Yes, so Mythos was announced a few weeks ago, and right after other models, cyber models was also announced by others. So we are probably at the beginning of something, as Mythos is not an isolated phenomenon. But what is important to know is that it seems to be a generic frontier model who is good at solving cyber use cases. What we learned from the different feedback that was published from announcements is that Mythos is good at finding vulnerabilities and shading exploitation of different vulnerabilities in order to achieve one objective, cyber objective. So to be clear, we do not have access to Mythos right now, so we haven't done our own assessment. But Orange Cyberdefense already used artificial intelligence since a long time. We already tested benchmark generic LLMs in order to assist augment our own cyber services. So we do have experience, and we did an assessment, kind of assessment of what was published by different actors in the ecosystem. So it's interesting to learn that Mythos is probably in the continuity of something that happened a few months ago with the discovery of the fact that it is possible to use artificial intelligence to enhance pen testing and to assist pen testers. It is said that it is also possible to find new vulnerabilities in software, for example, so the so-called zero-day vulnerabilities, and to exploit these vulnerabilities. So make many consequences of that. First is probably the fact that we will have a big challenge to solve this vulnerability management. It's already a big challenge today. The patch management is already a big issue for cybersecurity specialists. And this AI trend will probably increase this phenomenon. But it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity because we can then have this new tool to better assess our information system, to anticipate the vulnerabilities, and then to prioritize this patch management. So we are probably, again, in the continuity, but also at the beginning of a new story, the story of AI being able to perform cyber use cases. What Mythos said also, the consequence of Mythos is also the fact that it's probably another technical architecture, reference architecture to solve cyber security things, among other architecture that may be designed, such as multi-agentic systems. So yeah, it's very interesting to deep dive on these new trends.
Yeah, there's so many aspects to it there, but I guess simply, is Mythos itself a game changer? From what you say, it seems like one of many technologies that we can use.
Yes, it's difficult to say that it's a game changer. We will see in the coming months if it's the case. But I think we need to find the right balance between not being in a form of deny, but also not to overreact in this with these new announcements, because artificial intelligence, again, is probably a matter of balance between offensive purposes, what attackers can do with artificial intelligence, and what defenders can also leverage with these new technologies. So it's probably also a battle of time. The time of exploitation of vulnerability is collapsing year after year. Artificial intelligence is probably one of the factors of that. And it's a big matter for cyber defenders to take advantage of artificial intelligence, to take advantage of automation, to make sure that we will gain we will be successful in this battle. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Vivien. And moving over from France to South Africa, over to you, Wicus. From your research perspective, what does all the evidence tell us? I mean, is this a true turning point, as Vivien said, may not be a complete game changer? Are these capabilities still limited, or are our fears as great as they should be?
Thank you, Matthew, and good day, everybody. I think the change in what, how cybersecurity has changed, and especially landscape has changed, is a constant thing with regards to volumes and impact. I think it's definitely, we're starting to see some of that impact materializing in more than one way. And I'm just going to start quoting some facts that I've collected here to start talking about this point more closely. Vivien alluded that Mythos preview was released a couple of weeks ago already. If you think about it, it's more than a couple. I think it's what 7th April, so that some time has passed already. And this timing of this webinar has actually been quite fortunate as well, because just last week, Anthropic released a update on their Project Glasswing, in which they released some statistics with what they've seen, claiming 1,000 open source projects that they've participated in or have participated in with this Mythos project, Glasswing, 23,000 vulnerabilities or so that they've claimed they've discovered. And then we start drilling down into those numbers, we see it's about 1,000, more than just 1,000 vulnerabilities being high or critical have been identified. But the real number that's, I think, starting to become, say, scary, but it's where we have to start paying attention on, is they said of all those vulnerabilities that they discovered, only 97 patches were issued during that time, which is quite concerning considering the amount of vulnerabilities that they've reported. So that already starts showing that the volume game is becoming a thing. And speaking to that, if you look at April 2026, the number of vulnerabilities reported across many of these platforms, including our own platforms that we've seen, has actually jumped quite noticeably. There's a peak in April with regards to new vulnerabilities being disclosed. So there could be a correlation here with Mythos, but I think we should be careful just thinking about Mythos here. There are many other models out there that are just as capable and as also have the ability to contribute to this. So it's not just Mythos, since Mythos is also a closed evaluation loop. So I think we are seeing just a common behavior with regard to people learning how to harness these models more effectively. And we've seen that many fronts there have been complaints, especially on the open source front, with people saying that the volume that they're inundated with of reports is just quite staggering. The one that I found quite amusing is Linus Torvalds, one of the head maintainer of the Linux kernel, mentioned the Linux security mailing list has been thrown into the deep end with regards to being flooded with either duplicate vulnerability reports or even just a lot of noise that they have to deal with, and they have to sort through these things. And it's easy to, for these systems to find vulnerabilities, but I think there's still a human at the end of the day that's got to make a call with regard to the assessment and understanding. So if you have to go through all those vulnerability reports, it starts becoming quite a task as well. And we've also seen, there's also been reports on the bug bounty front where bug bounty payouts are now starting to drop in amount of reward that they're giving researchers, purely because they say that this bug bounty or the vulnerability research process has been commoditized, so that at the end of the day, the previously skilled researchers no longer feature in a handful, but now has been replaced by we call it a swarm of AI bots pushing out reports. So I think that's also some indication of where things are going. But it also speaks to the fact that just more code is also being written with the aid of artificial intelligence. And we've seen this now as well with regards to how worms, especially this last phase of this mini show loot and all these other worms that has been reported about infecting other projects, and this whole chain effect as well. So there's a lot of things happening in the ecosystem with regards to vulnerability of threat actors and just chasing after more and more vulnerability. So we don't know exactly have complete visibility in it, but when we look at it from reports being published like Google's Threat Intelligence Group, where they actually claim they've discovered a 0-day in conjunction with another threat actor, which they then responsibly disclosed with the impacted vendor. You can see these vendors like that's positioned in that space: Google, Anthropic, OpenAI. They obviously have a lot of telemetry and a lot of things they can see. So they see a lot of these weird and wonderful threats hitting or using their systems to actually exploit or build and discover vulnerabilities so that can be exploited. We've also seen prompt spy mobile malware, which I find quite interesting, that uses the accessibility API on the mobile phones to actually, on Android specifically, to actually drive the attacks, or at least use and interact with the infected device through a generative AI, which I think is quite the hacker side of me thinks it's quite cool. But at the same time, it's like interesting to see where these people's minds are going with regards to how they want to go about it. Now, Google claimed they've squashed that prompt spy malware for now, but it is something that was quite an interesting aspect. Cognitive attacks or influence operations, social engineering, all these things is still something that is just a natural, was naturally fitted to this type of space where generative AI actually can energize that and allow more and more people to be able to create content, or to at least drive more believable content in certain contexts, once again. And also, we've seen mentioned by the FBI. The FBI just released this week their IC3 report for 2025, where they actually mentioned quite a lot of AI-enabled crimes, and they got lots of stats in there. Investment complaints, because I look at it from complaints point of view, that's lodged at the FBI, and they have to investigate. Of the investments complaints, I think the total, I recall now quickly, is I think it's $8 billion of total complaints that was involved in investigations they did. About $632 million was associated with some sort of AI nexus component in there. So you can already start seeing that AI is being used by criminals even in assisting with certain types of fraud or just general exploiting of people. Similarly, business email compromise, confidence, even romance scams, employment scams as well. So AI is definitely being harnessed by criminals, and it's climbing at a steady rate according to the FBI. And we might see something interesting happening this year as well with everything that is happening.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, fascinating. There's so many aspects there. It's hard to know which questions to focus on exactly, but it seems, as you say, there's lots of Mythos is getting a lot of the attention. So that was an interesting aspect to me, that we shouldn't just focus there on that, where there's all these other models to look at. I was very interested by the motivation of hackers as well. Could change if the value of the data being produced is becoming less. It might change the driver to do it. But remaining in South Africa, I think give Dominic a chance to join us. And from your vast experience of ethical hacking, what are the new threats do you see? I mean, Vic has touched on quite a lot of them there already, but what do you see from emerging around the new next generation AI models? And can you tell us what the current state of AI-driven threats are, and how do you defend against it, I suppose?
I think Vivien said it very nicely. This is not necessarily a revolution, it's an evolution. There are other state-of-the-art models that have similar capabilities. This is an improvement on previous models. So, I mean, there's definitely credit to Anthropic due for their product marketing here. That was fantastic. I'm sure OpenAI is trying to figure out how they can get the same buzz over GPT 5.5. And certainly the evaluations that are coming out are showing that. And then I think Wicus makes a really good point. It's not about hypothetically what's coming down the line. We're already seeing those effects. And just listening to Wicus, if you think about it, we're all using AI. So invariably, there's a couple of people who sort of refuse to use it. There's always the refusal side of it. But I mean, I'm even seeing changes in those people. They're comfortable using the standard kind of AI tooling. So it's everywhere now. People are using it. And much like cyber, it becomes hard to differentiate between the security part. You know, if everyone's using computers, which crime is, if you get mugged and someone steals your phone, is it a mugging? Is it a contact crime? Or is it a cyber crime? Similar with AI, you know, if you use AI to call your hairdresser, is that an AI use case, or did you just get a haircut? And so we're seeing a lot of those effects everywhere, but then we need to kind of figure out the nuance. So, I mean, obviously our team hacks stuff. That's what we do. And the hands-on evaluation of how this works from a hacking perspective is maybe where we've got some interesting insight. So we're using AI in three places, but it's worth saying, and I saw a couple of people click on the poll in the beginning that they're worried about job losses. And I think it's really good to see that we're not just looking at the cybersecurity sides of it. I think there really is, sorry, I go a bit of a tangent. I'm Catholic, but the Pope's encyclical talking about the anti-human use cases being driven by AI, I think is very relevant for the time. So it's wonderful we're worried about those things. But the three places where we've been using AI in pen testing for the purposes of bettering the hacking, right? It's clearly offensive use cases using AI, so let's make sure we're using AI on our offensive use cases, but with the purpose of doing better work. So not of cutting out people or replacing people with AI or even just like reducing the amount of time humans are spending. If much like for the last 25 years of hacking, whatever tool comes along should make a good hacker better at what they're doing, be able to go faster. So that's what we've been doing. So the first one that I think people forget about in all of this is that LLMs have been an incredible boon to hacking. So having an expert who can sit next to you, not necessarily a hacking expert, but an expert in the technology you're looking at. A lot of the time hacking, as one of our founders once said, is like servicing a car through the exhaust. I don't know what you're looking at. I'm looking at the SAP system. We're trying to hack it, for example. But having an SAP expert next to you can tell you, well, if you use transaction code DBA cockpit, you'll be able to get to the data. That's very useful without you necessarily having to have been a SAP expert too, because our hackers look at many different use cases and technologies all the time. So it's really useful. And at Orange, there's an interesting internal tool called Dino2, which solves the use case that lots of people forget about is contracting. How do you send data to OpenAI, to Mistral, to Anthropic in a way that's not violating back-to-back NDAs and non-disclosure agreements and things like that? So across all of Orange, there is a well-embedded tool which gives access to all of the top-tier models as well as some local models, but in a way that is contractually sound. The group's big enough that they could maybe do that. And then, of course, coding tools. Coding tools are a boon. We've long considered that writing tools is an important point of being good at hacking, point-specific tools. With Claude Code, Codex, and many of the others, that's been amazing. The other place where AI has been very useful is MCP style, so Model Context Protocol style automation of tooling. So where can you get an AI to drive some of the tooling? And even better if it can be built in by a vendor into a regularly used tool. The one that we were very bullish on was Burp by Portswigger. Lots of hackers and pen testers use it all the time for evaluating web applications. I think Portswigger did some really good work in building that into the tool. So what we found, which was interesting, and maybe this for some of the people on the call will be interesting for their use cases, is with MCP style stuff, we've seen that it benefited junior people and senior people. So for senior people, what used to be 3-4 steps could now be 1 step. So you'd say, identify this application for me and generate a custom word list for it and go. So now in one go, it's done. For junior people, it could be, give me some ideas. What should I look at? What are attacks I haven't tried? Something like that. So there was this really nice benefit to both sides. So that was a clear win for us. Portswigger kindly wrote up a case study of our usage of it, if anyone's interested in Googling that. But then the last one, and I think really what the focus on today is agentic. So what does it look like if you have an agentic model? And Expo did the evaluation recently. I'm sure some people on this call looked at that. Wicus mentioned it, but Expo had this great line. They said, the model is the brain, the harness is the body. And so there's some debate, how far does harness go and how far does brain go? And so if you look at Curl's evaluation, found 5 things, 4 of them were false positives and 1 was a low risk thing, low vulnerability, not thing. Was that a lack of harness? So Expo and Mozilla, which also found many vulnerabilities, were they more successful because they were part of Project Glasswing and they were using different harnesses, better harnesses, things like that. So agentic is really this blending of the 2 things there. And we're seeing some really, really interesting results with agentic. I mean, I'd love to dismiss it, but it's been very powerful. But what we're seeing here is it's benefiting seniors more than it is juniors, or senior level thinking being put into it. So if you give it a prompt, and again, depends a bit on harness. If you say, go find me a vulnerability, it'll come back with some stuff and you need to go through it. But if you go, I've done a lot of the groundwork, these are the dead ends, these are my experience intuitions, here's context. And the gem is if you can give it source code. And this is mirrored by a lot of the evaluations, where there is source code available. Now, in a hacking use case, you don't always have source code, but if you can get source code, if you can reverse engineer stuff to a suitable level, then it really makes a big difference and you get a significantly higher quality. And you'll see the models are just sort of excited maybe, I don't know if that's the right term, excited by source code. But this is still experimental for us. And part of it is the contractual maturity. I'd love to hear after this call from some of the people on here. Would you be comfortable with us doing a pen test where your data is being sent to OpenAI and Anthropic? And what's being sent in a pen test? Obviously, it's a structure of applications, but it could also be unreleased applications that are strategic to your business. It can be usernames and passwords in there. There's a lot that's in there. And so as much as we'd love to be AI accelerationists, there's always that contractual handbrake that needs to be sorted out. And as we saw with Portswigger, the longest hurdle was contractual, getting back-to-back NDAs in place and non-disclosure agreements. So I'm going on a bit. But so that's what we're seeing from a pen testing perspective, where we're actually evaluating this stuff. Haven't had a chance to evaluate Mythos, but we see strong increases between different models. And then lastly, maybe something interesting, because it's relevant for a little bit from now, the guardrails in something like 5.5 actually make the hacking worse than 5.4, despite the fact that it's being a better model. And that's if you're cyber verified and things like that. So guardrails are also an interesting inhibitor to some of the hacking use cases when you're trying to work at scale, some of these things. That's my long answer to your short question, Matt.
No, it's a great answer. It's good to see the passion there about it. It's obviously getting people very worked up in a good way, I think. We were focused on it. And what I really liked about what you said there was you mentioned a lot about people. So although we talk a lot about technology all the time, the people is a big factor to address some of the concerns. It sounded to me like you have actually helps the opportunities. It's actually helping your people, so not putting them out of work. And also you addressed some of the data security side, which I think was one of the biggest concerns here as well. Okay, great. I will jet over now to Tim in the US and get the view from on the other side. Well, the other side for me of the Atlantic. So Tim, in your view, what are the best practices? What are the practical steps an organization can take to build a next generation AI, shall we say, security program?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. And just to say, we've been working with our customers for already a while on AI, but of course, Mythos changed the perspective. Like Dominic said, like Vivien said, it shows the ability of what AI can do. And there's no doubt in anybody's mind today that AI will fundamentally change how we think about cyber defense. But in the end, it's a little bit a two-headed beast. At one end, you're playing defense, and you need to make sure that your program can battle attackers that use AI against you. But on the other hand, the CISO also needs to make sure that the organizations can use AI in a structural and a strategical way to improve your business. You can compare it a little bit to the rise of the internet. Back in the days when internet came, there were people that said, "Well, that internet, that's something that will go away or has little value to my business." And today, there is not one single business that can survive without the structural and strategic use of internet. Is it Facebook publishing? Is it LinkedIn? Is it really running your complete business over the internet? Same will happen with AI. In the future, AI will find a place in all your business processes. Now, the luck that we have is that we still don't know what is in front of us, but we have identified the person who is going to secure us for it. With the rise of the internet, it was a little bit, is it the network guy? Is it the telephone guy? Is it who is going to, there was not even a risk methodology in place on how to securely connect to the internet. Today, it's the CISO, and the CISO will be challenged in driving the AI adoption on security. And he will need to balance out the use of AI against the risks that are incorporated in AI use of third parties, of adversaries, of his own company. And so when we look at the four most important points that we bring to our customers on how to create an AI-enabled cyber defense strategy, the very first one we need to point out is that you need to change your risk management structure. You need to shift over your risk management from a human speed attacker to an AI speed attacker. It's been clear, Wicus said, the increase of the vulnerabilities, but what we have seen is that AI already today, even if Mythos is not really publicly available, we see that AI is increasing the cyber attacks in speed, complexity, and scale. And what is even worse is that they run autonomous. You have a 24/7 attacker that never rests, and no job is too much for him to try and penetrate your defenses, right? And that is very important. Best example it was raised again as well before is patch management, right? And if you put patch management back into risk management, what was the standard way of thinking about implementing a patch? It's okay, there's a certain risk when you install a patch on a system, right? The system might not come back, the system might go down. You have to take into account downtime. So you're going to work on a maintenance window, right? And that is all good and well in a human speed attack scenario. But when you have an AI speed attack scenario, it has shown that the exploit time is going down to minutes. Some reports even report negative figures in attack speed, right? That the attack is done before the patch is available. And so you have to ask yourself your question in the risk management. And that's a personal thing. I cannot say do it like this, do it differently. It's a personal thing that you need to bring into your risk management practices. What's the biggest risk? Is the biggest risk having maybe 1% chance of an unscheduled downtime? Or is the biggest risk waiting for 2 weeks in implementing this patch on my boarded firewall, right? You have to evaluate these things right now, today. When a new patch of your boarded firewall becomes available, are you going to implement it right away? Or are you going to wait 2 weeks until you have the next maintenance window and potentially open up your complete environment for an AI-powered attack, which is much faster than the human attack, right? That's the first point that I want to make. Rethink your risk management towards an AI-enabled threat landscape. That's very important. The second one that we've seen is that it's very important to come back to your fundamental security controls, your base security hygiene. We've seen attacks that are simple brute force attacks to passwords on edge devices, right? If you have a weak password, you will be breached, right? If you have an open vulnerability, you will be breached. If you have an open port, it will be probed. That's the reality of today. AI becomes autonomous. They are scanning the internet like crazy. And the complexity of the attack chain is in AI. AI will make the decisions what to do next when they have a success. And so a lot of these things can be handled by your fundamental security controls. MFA, for instance. MFA is very difficult to breach by AI. You have a second factor, right? These kind of basic security controls become ever more important. You need to make sure that your environment is fully under control, but you also need to continuously test that landscape. You need to make sure that your controls are maintained, that nobody makes an error. You have to come into a mindset that an error will be detected and will be exploited. So you have to do continuous asset inventory, continuous asset management to see whether your security is not showing gaps at any place in your environment. The third point I need to make, and so the second point is strengthen and continuously validate your fundamental security controls. The third point I want to make is embrace AI as a business and security imperative. AI is present in your organization. AI will be more present in your organization tomorrow. You will need to build AI structures. You will need to have your business processes move into an AI-powered environment. That goes for the cyber defender. Your cyber defense will need to incorporate AI to react faster, better, but also to offload tasks of your people. Like Dominic said, in pen testing, but it's the same thing on your stock operators. Some tasks will need to shift into the AI world. Your cyber defenders will become more capable because of the use of AI. AI will certainly take some of the autonomous tasks, but an AI-powered cyber defender is much more powerful than a non-AI-powered defender. But you also need to make sure that your AI builds structural business processes for your people. You cannot be left behind. And the CISO will need to balance about what is structural and secure use of AI against of keeping the company back against its competitors. And if we see the speed of how AI is evolving, this is probably the biggest concern and the biggest task that a CISO has today. How to accelerate your business with AI without putting too much risk on your organization. And that will be a balancing act like crazy over the next couple of months or years. Normally I would say years, but with the speed of AI, I came down to minutes. I don't know how fast it will go, but it's a balancing act. So the third point that I want to make is embrace AI as cyber defender, but also as a business. And the fourth and the final point that I want to make is think about your people. Prepare your people. The reality of your workforce is now completely different. At one end, you have the technology adept. Your SOC defenders will love the introduction of AI in the SOC. They will thrive on that. But you also have your non-IT users that will face an AI-empowered world. At one end, we will expect them to use AI to do their day-to-day business. We will tell them that young guy of 25 years old is 10 times faster than you. Yeah, because he uses Claude and you don't. And you need to make sure that your workforce consistently and structurally has access to secure and powerful AI to run their business. But the other end, and that is more important in this story, you also need to make sure that your people start to think differently about the data they get back. Not at the least exploits. Deepfake, we all heard about deepfake, right? You need to teach your people to question every single piece of information they get in front of them, even the things that they learned to trust in their youth or in their growing up. When you get a phone call, when you get a video call from your CEO, you see him, you hear him. Well, with deepfake, you cannot trust that anymore. So you need to teach your people to think differently and question data as a whole, because you don't know what is true and what is false anymore. So your people need to become more resilient to protect your organization against AI enabled attacks. And so that's the fourth point. Prepare your people. Please don't forget your people. It will be demanding on your workforce. And so overall, I need to say the organizations that see AI both as a challenge, as an answer to business questions, is probably the organization that will thrive over the next couple of years, right? You need to incorporate AI. Don't be afraid of it, right? But don't open the doors either for AI, no matter what. So you will need to balance that line and make sure that your company thrives in the era of AI, which is upon us.
Yeah. Brilliant. I just made me think a lot of things. I was that 25-year-old guy once. It's hard to believe, not that long ago. But I think the idea that risk management is the approach that hasn't changed. The threats you can't really control. You can reduce the impact on organization when it happens. You're just adjusting the focus of your risks, I guess. And I thought the other thing, one of the many things you said that was very interesting, these models are helping to accelerate, but they're not really changing the best practices. They're just speeding things up. I suppose the thing I picked up is the timeliness of that we have to do things at. So no, great stuff. So so back over to France and back to Vivien. Let's look a little bit more at how we can expand on what Tim said. How can organizations test and improve their defenses from your point of view?
Yes, thank you. To answer this question, I would like to continue on what Tim was saying. The fact that, as you said, Tim, attackers do not need artificial intelligence to act, but they are already augmented with artificial intelligence, and they won't stop. So it is necessary for cyber defenders and for companies to be also augmented in the way you explain, Tim. So, in other words, Mythos is not Skynet, but it shows that artificial intelligence is playing an increasing role in the cybersecurity field. So it is important to take details into account, because some will say that it is not so good at finding true vulnerabilities without false positive. Others will claim that it can find a critical vulnerability very well without any human intervention. Well, it probably depends on the method, as you all said, the method of testing, whether you target the software, the code, the binary, or both. It is whether it is an information system, and if it's in an information system, is it on external services or on the Active Directory or and so on. So, and if you consider the security measures settled to protect your target or not. So that's why again, it's a balance between what this artificial intelligence will bring and already bring to the defenders against what it is able for offensive purposes on the attacker side. And Wicus said it very well. The worst scenario is that, and it's not science fiction, is that attackers may use artificial intelligence to increase automation of their own kill chain, since artificial intelligence can lower the entry barrier and could also allow in one future the orchestration of sophisticated attacks at lower cost. So there's probably something around the cost of the prompts. It's a bit caricatured, but there's probably something to say in terms of business model, both for attackers, because in some way they also have their own return on investment. The cost of the prompt is like a new KPI, but it's also the case for defenders and for the companies to also take into account the ability to access to artificial intelligence in the right way, with the right architectures, the right models, in order to, yes, to gain this battle against the attackers. In any case, and to bounce again on Dominic and team comments, human expertise remain important. The future is not pen testers being replaced at all by artificial intelligence. It's more experts being better thanks to AI as a tool. I mean, in the same way, doctors will probably be also enhanced with AI, and you will be more, you will be well cared by doctors who will be AI augmented in the future. Probably, the parallel is probably also good for the cybersecurity field, and it's probably where we are moving all together.
Yeah. Brilliant. I suppose it's true with all cybersecurity. It's all about sort of filtering out the noise, focusing on the positives. I know I want to give Dominic a chance because I know he's very passionate to talk about this more. Do you have any other practice to add to this? Any other comments maybe around how to defend against these threats, how to best use it?
Thanks, Matt. And that's actually, as you asked that, a participant also said that they see a lot of talk about this asymmetry between the finding of vulnerabilities versus the fixing of vulnerabilities. So it's clearly on some of our participants' minds too. And what Vivien just said is, I find super interesting, is what are the economics, what are the incentives, who's better set up for success here? Because in the end, that answers the question in the long term. For who's going to win. So, I think Tim's given us a lot of advice on what kind of things can we do to defend proactively. But if we start looking at our crystal ball, this was a crystal ball, what do we need to worry about in the future? And I think that the tagline around Mythos, right, was the vuln-apocalypse. The vuln-apocalypse. And I mean, it's not maybe always make the most sense to respond to taglines, but Vic has pointed out we are seeing measured increase in vulnerabilities coming out. Another participant asked in the question box, just a punt for the question box if anyone's missing it. What are the, I wanted to punt the question box and I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, they are. Okay, I've lost my train of thought, sorry. So let's, the economics of the two and who's set up for success ends up being an interesting question for me. So if you look at Project Glasswing, where the model was given to defenders and not to offenders, offensive use cases. They didn't reach out to penetration testing companies. They went to companies that had a defensive incentive, the vendors and things like that. So first off, the vendors can get access to these models probably before hackers can, and have the guardrails optimized an array to work for them. The second is billion-dollar corporations probably have more money to spend, and Vivien was talking about, what is the cost of the prompt and how much can you spend on it? How much money can Cisco spend prompting Mythos-style frontier models in defensive use cases and proactively looking for vulnerabilities versus bug hunters who are maybe relying on reverse engineered or dynamic-only inspection on some of those devices? And then so I think in the long term, what you end up with is that the defenders are actually better set up for success here. In other places where, so if you take coding models, sure, somebody can write malware using coding models, but likewise, so can an EDR vendor improve their detections or features potentially through coding models. So I think there's an equal footing there. Tim's raised some other questions about deep fakes and things like that. I think it's still not quite sure where it is, but I think a lot of the time what's happening is we've got an imbalance where we've not yet returned to homeostasis. One side has a slight advantage over the other, so things are popping up there, and then the other side figures out, because your example of the Linux kernel mailing list, a lot of what Linus was saying is we have a communication problem with this. How do we get efficient for this new world? And once that's sorted out, and the Linux, maybe Linux kernel is not always the best example of some of the security stuff of late, but I think it'll return to a homeostasis. So even though we'll be in a radically changed world, what will the outcomes fundamentally change? So I don't think in the long term there's a vuln-pocalypse that outpaces a fix-pocalypse, a patch-pocalypse for one part. I do think we're going to need to figure out a way to validate vulnerabilities better. Because even if you do have a lot more vulns and a lot more fixes, you still need to understand what that looks like in a real-world deployment. And I think anyone on this call knows that the number of vulnerabilities come out that even where they should apply to their infrastructure that you have deployed, applications you have deployed, don't. Or if they do, a POC comes out and it doesn't work against that same thing. So real-world exploitability is still something that is, I'm not sure what the Venn diagram overlap looks like. It depends on the vulnerability there. So in your harness, does it have source code? Well, the vendors have got source code better than they do. You don't necessarily have source code. Does it have enough tokens and prompts and things like that? Can it be, how big is your field of green that you feed this cow available to you? So I think I think in the long term, it's not clear to me that we'll have a vuln-pocalypse where defenders are outpaced by offensive use cases. I think defenders are actually better set up for success here in the long term. But this is some serious crystal ball looking where I'm trying to extrapolate from now into the future.
Yeah, no, great. I'm just conscious of time. As usual, these topics get us all lots of ideas, and we're running away with time. Which is a good thing, because. But I do want to address some of the questions, but maybe very quickly, Wicus, I'm going to give Tim maybe a couple of lines, just to any other thoughts you just want to add before I start addressing some of the questions.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, there's a couple of questions in there, and I think there's a few people that I want to try and address at the same time. Shout out to Nicholas Droger there, ex-colleague of ours. Question about defenders and will AI get benefit from that? I think Dominic touched on it as well as Vivien. But the challenge is, and this is one thing that I always wonder about, is that where the asymmetry at the moment favors the attackers, is because they don't have to worry about compliance, governance, impact to systems, and things like that. But when it comes to defenders or people using AI in their environment, there has to be accountability, there has to be compliance, there has to be all sorts of checkboxes that we have to follow. We're already seeing AI, when you deploy it in an intelligent way, especially on the SOC level, with stats internally for the systems that we have enriched or made capable of using AI. We're already seeing it starting to eliminate all the heavy, let's call it redundant, repetitive work, and it's already solving that first layer of taking away load from people, and it allows people, especially the use cases with more complicated things, to actually focus on. And similar to what Dominic said earlier about the pen testing, where your entry level, or let's say your juniors versus your more experienced people, the use cases actually benefit both. We can automate SOC components, such as triage levels at certain levels, but at some point you still have to have people look at it. Similarly, when we have to apply patches and we have to go through the motions of accepting those patches in an organization, especially in enterprise, you have to be certain that you have done, your best practices internally, the policies are followed, sign-offs are done, as well as to make sure that these things happen in an orderly manner in case something goes wrong and you have to roll back. We've seen how wonderful Windows have been with their reliability on their patches, which caused people to roll back still, even though this patch was pushed out, and then they're still sitting there with mitigations that have to go. So I think in the long term, we'll find solutions, especially where we can use automation with AI to assist people to make better decisions. But I think, as you said, with more legacy that's still accumulating daily, there's still that challenge of you can't just auto patch systems. It's not an Oracle system or SAP system. You can't just like point the AI at it and say patch and let me know when you're done. I think there's a lot of people that's going to ask questions if something goes wrong. So accountability, I think, is a big thing, as well as do we understand the impact? Do you understand? So there's a lot of still, I think, the corporate world has to mature to this, but also I think our internal systems have to mature to it. So yeah, there's a lot I want to say, but I also want to give other people a chance to fill in there.
I'll quickly, we'll address a couple of questions. I just will say that because we are so quickly running out of time, there is an option at the end to fill in a survey. If you do check the box that says, let us contact you, we're more than happy to come and answer some of these questions directly. And we, as Monica mentioned, we're considering doing a follow-on session just to address the questions and answers, give people a chance to have a bit of two-way dialogue. But I see one assigned. There are quite a few here now, so I can't go through all of them, but one assigned to you, Tim. So vulnerabilities discovered very quickly. For example, financial services are very slow to act because of complex regulations. They thank you, Tim, for your insights, but in context of the hundreds of softwares, how to react very quickly, right, in the short term?
Yes, thank you, Matt. And that indeed indicates that the risk methodology thinking needs to be an industry thing, not a corporate thing, right? I mean, complex regulations are there, but I'm very worried about banking software today. If you see that Mythos can find vulnerabilities in security deployments, right, in core firewalls, in things that are created to add security to your network, what about business to consumer apps like banking apps, right? They will be there, and the struggle is real, and I hear you. But coming back to the question specifically, it's probably not likely that you will be able to patch overnight. I get that, right? I've been around in this industry. So you need to apply everything you can to reduce the risk. And that is, for instance, like strengthen your fundamental security controls. Your front end, which is reachable for the hacker. There was another question that I saw. The front end is most important because that's open to attacks, not to denote the importance of internal security and internal attacks, but external attacks are probably more important to patch. So your exposure management becomes very, very, very important as well. Apply your fundamentals, right? And so yes, the struggle is real. The risk mitigation and the complex regulation need to allow faster patching. There will be no way around it. But even then, implementing security controls, your fundamental security controls, lowering your external attack surface is at least as important to that. And I don't have a answer or a magic solution for you. I feel your pain, but this is something that will need to evolve over the next couple of months or years in how the industry adapts to AI-powered attacks. I'm sure it will happen. I hope that responds to your question.
Good response. So I hope so. Hopefully the person will come back and say so. I'm just going to pick one more or two more just to, and then I'm just going to throw it to whoever wants to answer it. How does the one from Maboko, sorry, I'm not so good at names, but anyway, so how does one balance patching if we're always going to introduce exploitable vulnerabilities in a short space of time? I'm going to let you, any of you want to jump in? Yeah, that's it. I'll let you go, Dominic. Yeah, you've got the answer.
Yeah, if you're ever bored, I once wrote a thesis as a 20-year-old on patch management, which is the most boring document you can read in the world. But it means I have opinions about patching. So in the 2000s, we were already talking about there's too much software to patch. I'm talking like 2000, not 2010 and later. So if you think about the software stack deployed across a medium enterprise, there's too much software that you can patch. So we already triage based on exploitability, and we've certainly seen, and maybe Wicus, you can comment on this, a move towards trying to rate the exploitability of a vulnerability so that we can prioritize better whether we should patch things. So I think exploitability ends up being a little bit of the golden ticket for us here to try and figure out which of the patches we need to apply first. And then the other things that might contribute to exposability. Is it internet facing? Do can anyone authenticate to it? Do all your customers have access, or the whole world, or something like that? Some of those things end up creating a bit of a risk model that you can use to prioritize.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to get some.
Maybe
oh God, sorry, please. Yeah.
So sorry, just to add also something about that. There's probably also something to do in terms of I would say mitigation, because it's not only vulnerability exploitation, it's also the ability for the attackers to then bounce, to lateralize to other information system or to other software bricks. So to lower the risk, both for developers and system designers, I would say, there's also something to enhance in terms of hardening, isolation, zero trust architectures, etc. That's where the consulting also plays a big role. I mean, it's not only using AI to be better, it's also, and that was said also by Dominic before, it's also to use the whole measures that are well known to be robust enough against a lot of attack scenarios. So I think that's also important to remind that all that has been said since many years in terms of cybersecurity still plays a big role against AI new capabilities.
Yeah, totally true. Okay, we'll go one more question, I think, and take a chance on this. So Yaku, which I'm guessing is one of your South African patriots, you mentioned you include AI in your cyber defense. You have not mentioned what aspects you recommend companies to implement, the how-to of implementing AI in cyber defense, although I think, Tim, you did get quite into that. Do you want to, who wants to take that one?
I just responded to Yaku there, but I think in the short of it, I think is AI has strengths at the moment, especially in general. It's a good analyst tool. It's good at synthesizing information. We've already seen it being used quite well in use cases such as, helping triage information, especially lots of repetitive information, creating almost like if you're quite familiar with the old school of inference engines, that type of thing, but a lot more in the natural language side of things, where you can actually start, or I wouldn't say necessarily understand the information, but it can give you a soundboard as to what to do, right? How to go about things, how to go through a checklist. Dominic also talked about the benefit for younger, or let's say less experienced people and more experienced people, where you have use cases in which it can actually guide people through certain things. So from a defender's point of view, I don't think we're going to have this magic button at the moment, say like fix all my AI buttons, AI problems using AI, right? I think 20 years ago we had this whole idea of script kiddies, but I think now we've got vibe kiddies, because everybody just wants to do something with AI and solve problems quickly. But I think it's that the judicious use of AI, I think, is a big thing. Understand where your business use case makes sense. Otherwise, you're just going to run out quickly out of runway, because I think most of the AI projects fail because people don't understand the use case and probably might be too ambitious. Keep it narrow, focused, and know what you want to solve, and understand where your business is heading. Because AI adoption, I think, just for the sake of AI adoption but doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I think that's a really good place to leave this. Would love to carry on for hours more talking about this. I think some fantastic viewpoints, but just a few key takeaways, I suppose. I think it's important to master your asset inventory with attack surface management, manage vulnerabilities via risk-based approach. You need to test your defenses, so conduct automated pen tests via AI, secure applications, especially the LLM pipelines. Purple teaming, very important. So again, the human side, to test defenses in coordination with your security operations centers. And then I think finally, the detection of anomalous behavior, the weak signals and security alerts need to deploy technologies such as SIEM, XDR, and all these various technologies that go with that. But yeah, fundamental hygiene, AI enables defenses are definitely your best tools to fight AI and to defend against AI. But yeah, so some absolutely great thoughts and ideas. Wish we could do this a bit longer. Want to thank everyone for attending. I hope you found it useful and informative. As I said, can't possibly cover such a rich topic in just an hour, but we're happy to continue that conversation with you. Please do do the survey, the follow-up, and we will come back and talk to you by all means anytime and discuss this further with you. Thank you.